of England's historical buildings and current politicians, Granding's castle was made of stone, drafty in the attic and cost a fortune to maintain. The walls resonated with the weight of antiquity, and every last floorboard carried the poetic echo of 50,000 footsteps. Throughout the centuries, it had stood strong through the ravages of war and fire, the blood spill of Viking raids, and the execution of a king. Unfortunately for Eric the Red and Henry the Headless, nobody remembered any of that because of all the orgies. Hundreds of orgies. Enthusiastic, occasionally gravity-defying sex from the 9th century to the 19th. The place was so infamously randy that even the token ghost in the library had apparently taken la petite mort extremely seriously and died by orgasm. Officially, the castle was the ancestral seat of the Dukes of Buckland. Unofficially, the drawbridge had always been lowered for any stray monarch or horny peer who needed a rural shag pad, much to the horrified enjoyment of the neighbouring village. Whispers were particularly loud in the village this week because the 14th Duke, who had political interests, was hosting the nation's new Prime Minister. The notoriously straight-laced and puritanical new Prime Minister. Surely His Grace should have forked out to get the guy a hotel room. "He can't be sleeping in that room," people exclaimed over flagons of ale in the Dog and Duck, with appropriately hushed emphasis. Guests of honour at Granding's were usually shown to the enormous Grand State Suite, or that room in capitals. To anyone who'd heard about its furnishings, mostly wallpaper, personally hand-painted by a king during his artistic phase, the makeshift murals stretched around all 4 walls and featured 46 different instructional diagrams for cunnilingus. Nobody could remember which king was responsible for the masterpiece. According to castle lore, it was the one who'd had 18 mistresses, numerous illegitimate offspring, and syphilis. This narrowed the possibilities to approximately 32 people. Regardless of provenance, it was holding up surprisingly well for its age. According to Mrs. Miller, the butcher's wife, "Still had nice pastel colours. With her own eyes she'd seen 'em, those little pictures." She'd been so appalled that she'd counted them twice and then redrawn the 10 most athletic examples on the back of a news sheet. The new PM was a sound chap, though, murmured the villagers, and the general British public. He'd be rigidly disapproving of the environment at the castle. He was a devoted family man. And although he wasn't the most exciting appointment, and lacked any extraordinary talents, he was a safe choice, particularly after the financial extravagances of his predecessor. In the opinion of the newest maid at Granding's, as she eyed the gentleman in question, that assessment was a little unfair. If you asked her, it took quite extraordinary talent to perform oral sex while dangling from a chandelier, particularly in this building. It was a unique failing throughout the castle that the candles in the ceiling fixtures were positioned dangerously low and made the backs of the knees sweaty. Or so she'd heard. And not to be crass, but the Prime Minister's rigidity did not look disapproving at all. Right now, it looked positively perky. Tugging her dowdy cap lower over her brow, the maid moved through the antechamber, her slippers making a bare wisp of sound. Dutifully ignoring the symphony of vigorous middle-aged adultery in the adjoining room, as well as the sight of the devoted family man's pale, dimpled backside, she set down a tray of refreshments. She refilled the empty glasses with port. Music, in the very loosest definition of the word, drifted from a nearby salon, where Lady Cecily Pinkerton was fully immersed in butchering her evening aria. Her ladyship had seen one opera a few years ago, instantly blamed her husband for thwarting her newfound stage ambitions, and had orally tortured him every single night since. Innocent bystanders be damned. As a devotee of extramarital shenanigans, Lord Roger Pinkerton was not in a position to complain about any of his wife's choices, but did so nevertheless.